This is by far the most brutal and artistic manga I have ever read in my entire life. Don't take the word artistic lightly. Every panel is worthy of being framed and hung up on your wall. Prepare yourself for Shigurui Death Frenzy. First of all, I have to slap a huge disclaimer on this series. If you're soft or squeamish, I recommend that you take 1 or 2 steps back right now. There's going to be a lot of blood, gore, and nudity. There will be no spoilers, enjoy the ride, no turning back now. The problem with this series is not even the brutality or the blood spraying across the pages and the human limbs severed. It's about a world filled with cruelty and darkness, where only the strongest and the most ruthless survive. Every man is just another pawn to his masters, and every woman is little more than objects. Shigurui is about vengeance, but not a satisfactory one like you see in a Tarantino movie like Kill Bill, or like that one specific anime about a healer that resets the world to literally fuck everyone. I'm not going to name it because I know there are some cultured men and women that know what I'm talking about. I see you, my boys. Everyone is gathered around to watch the most eccentric duel of all time. 2 samurais, one blind and crippled, and the other one with only 1 arm. However, although it might not look like it, they are considered by many the best of their time. At the dueling ground from the west, Fujiki Gennosuke, and from the east, Irako Seigen enter the arena. Even though Seigen is a young man, he has gray hair, is blind, and is crippled because of a vicious cleft in his right foot. As he limps forward, dragging his foot along the way, he is supported by a female companion. Everyone is shocked and is speechless by the sight of these 2 samurais as they take their stance with real swords. Seigen, the blind samurai, strikes his sword towards the cleft in his foot, using every single muscle in his body to hold it tightly, almost looking like a mad demon who escaped from hell. On the other side, Gennosuke holds his sword in front of him with 1 arm, using the impeccable strength of his deformed back muscles. While no one has any idea of what is about to be unleashed, Iku, Seigen's companion, and Mie, Gennosuke's companion, have their eyes fixed on the match, knowing hell is empty and all the demons are here. At this point, the main part of the story takes place. We go back 7 years to observe the history between Seigen and Gennosuke. You might think, now that we know what the climax of the story is, there's no room left for mystery and suspense. But you'll be surprised at how every individual in this world has a bizarre and dramatic twist in their lives. The same goes for our main characters, Gennosuke and Seigen. During this period, the practice of the sword is highly valued among people. The story also revolves around the different sword schools and their unique techniques. Kogan School is one of the most widely acclaimed among them all. Kogan Iwamoto, the head of the school, is regarded by many as the tiger. One day, Gennosuke, the head student of Kogan School, who is incredibly professional and respected, goes against the ambitious Seigen, that is seeking to challenge the headmaster Iwamoto and the whole school. From the very first time Gennosuke lays his eyes on Seigen, a feeling of resentment washes over him, and the hate between these 2 warriors for the first time starts to fester. Seigen, a beautiful man with long hair and red lips, doesn't seem to be the warrior type, and Gennosuke wants to teach him a lesson by quote-unquote beautifying him for others to see. However, as Seigen and Gennosuke fight in a duel, he finds out that Seigen is more than what meets the eye. Seigen skillfully traps Gennosuke's finger and with a swift strike breaks them and makes him lose his balance. Gennosuke, being frustrated by his loss, demands a rematch, but Oshimata Gonzaemon, the head of the dojo, demands Gennosuke to stand aside. He wants to take point. This beast of a human starts wielding a gigantic wooden sword like it's made out of nothing, trying to beat Seigen, who is bluntly disrespecting the Kogon school. Seigen soon finds out that he's no match for this bull and begs Gonzaemon to accept him as his pupil. However, the bowl is not done yet with the beautification. Seigen, terrified of what might happen, starts jumping around like a coward. After all, Gonzaemon is impressed by Seigen's light movement as he jumps to the ceiling. He states that the bastard might be gifted. When the dust settles, they bring him to Kogon, the headmaster, and after the initiation ceremony, he becomes a disciple and a student of Kogon school. The interesting thing about Gennosuke and Seigen is that they are so much alike. They are both born in the lowest level of society. They both think that they were born as samurai and their childhood was prone to violence, and they both killed for the first time at a young age. However, Seigen despises samurais and the social hierarchy. He seeks to be the highest level of samurai and climb the ladder not only to satisfy his ambitions, but to fight the fixed social system. On the other hand, Gennosuke has a completely opposite belief. This contradiction is well shown when Gennosuke and Seigen are chatting on the beach after a training session. Seigen, for the first time, uses the word "we," telling Gennosuke, "We too can work our way up with our martial skills, climbing above others and grasping the heavens in our hands." Gennosuke replies, "A samurai is like this shell. The only road for a man born to the house of samurai is protecting that house. That is all." This opposition of beliefs doesn't let them to be side by side like brothers, which is extremely heartbreaking. Reading this manga, I've always imagined how different the story would have been if these two warriors stood beside each other, not in front nor behind. Nothing would have stopped them to be the best of all. Unfortunately, that is not what happens. As the story progresses, a lot happens that I can't get into because I don't want to spoil anything. On this journey, Seigen goes on to lose his eyes, and Gennosuke ends up with only one arm. In the end, as you've seen in the beginning, which is kind of funny saying it out loud, they become impeccable enemies and end up in a duel for life. There are a lot of peculiar and bizarre characters with their own specialty and techniques, every single one being crazier than the other. For example, a warrior that specializes in spears, piercing a snake's tongue without shedding a single drop of blood. Two homosexual brothers who specialize in cutting a metal helmet in half mid-air. And a hideous, deformed man who can attack the opponent's ankles from the ground because of his abnormal body structure. All of which are tangled with the story in one way or another. The metamorphosis of Seigen and Gennosuke to their final form is met with manifold ups and downs. Their journey and the pain they suffer make you feel pitiful, that all of their endeavor and hard work is only for destruction and death. They are both trapped in the vicious cycle of vengeance without any salvation in sight. Now I just quickly want to share my thoughts on this manga with you guys. I'm really curious to see who you guys root for if you eventually decide to read the manga or you have already read it. Personally, I think Seigen is a superior character compared to Gennosuke. I think his ideology and goals are kind of noble. When you think about it, Seigen internally hates himself even though he might not realize it. He resents samurais even though he's technically a samurai. I think he definitely doesn't deserve the suffering that he goes through, although the pain makes him more powerful than ever before. On the other hand, Gennosuke's ideology doesn't really convince me. He genuinely thinks of himself as an object that needs to be ordered around. He doesn't think for himself and is basically a mere pawn, but a really strong one. Nevertheless, it's really hard to judge his situation. He thinks that he owes his entire life to Kogon because he was saved by him and brought into the clan at the early age of his life. Despite all of these facts, I believe Hiroko Seigen is the most extraordinary character in this series. One other thing I'd like to mention is that this manga makes me interested in samurai history so much. I wish my classes back in school were this badass to inspire me to learn history on my own, instead of badgering us with nonsense that nobody cared. While I was reading this manga, I checked a lot of the history regarding the Edo period in which this series takes place, and I've learned a lot. All the rulers and how cruel they could be, the samurai class and their relationships with the officials, and the general state state of Japan. Even though Japan was blessed with peace and there were no civil or global wars for the most part of this period, there was still so much brutality and bloodshed for nothing. History aside, I think the illustrations are phenomenal. They are completely on a whole nother level. I would no cap have a massive picture of these drawings on my wall. There are a lot of times when different characters are depicted as an animal, like tiger, bull, serpent, toad. Not only it looks so amazing, but it's kind of like a way that the author communicates with us, saying the things out loud that we're thinking when we see these insane characters. With that being said, I think this manga is an absolute must read. Even though it does have an anime as well, I highly recommend that you stick with the manga. However, you can watch the anime and then start reading the rest of the manga because it doesn't cover the whole story. But in my opinion, the anime is just not capable of adapting this piece of art 100%. It's kind of slow-paced as well, which I believe would drive off a lot of people trying to get into it. The manga doesn't have that problem, there's no stalling and it gets straight to the point. But, I mean, I still think that the anime and the manga are both masterpieces. Seriously though, give it a shot. Well, that's about it. This was Radical Edgy. Until next time.